Hey guys, this is FilmNerd here. Thought I would do something a little different for y'all today. Since today marks the 3-year anniversary of when I first started my website, I thought I would take the time to answer a couple questions. I had some fans submit questions on my Discord server, and I had to narrow it down to about 15 questions, so I've decided that I would go ahead and answer them for you all. First, I want to take the opportunity to say thank you everyone who not only submitted a question, but who has supported me over the years. Whether you're a first-time reader or you've been with me since the beginning, I greatly appreciate all the support that you guys have given me. Anyway, let's move on to the Q&A. Most watched movie and hardest review to make. This is a tough one. There are a lot of movies that I've seen numerous times, but if I had to pick my most watched movie, it would probably be the original Star Wars film. Ever since I was a kid, I've been a huge Star Wars fan. I've loved almost all of the movies, but the original still holds a special place in my heart. The hardest review to make, I wouldn't be able to say one review was more difficult than the others, but when I did my Universal Monsters marathon, that was pretty tough to do. Just having to do an entire month of reviews and sitting through every single one of the Universal Monster movies. I mean, of course you had, the classics, but for every, Dracula, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, etc., you had stuff like the Mummy sequels or the Invisible Woman. It was, at times it was a slog to get through, but in general, that was pretty difficult to do, just an entire marathon of reviews. Movie you desperately want in your hands. Favorite lost films. For a movie that I desperately want in my hands, definitely The Day the Clown Cried from Jerry Lewis, which has become notorious over the years, and for how little is known about the movie other than, well, it exists. The fact that its star, Jerry Lewis, has sworn up and down that it will never see the light of day, like he's kept the only existing prints of the film, and only a few people have actually seen the movie. Like, that's one that even if the movie is bad, I still want to watch it just to say that I have watched it. In terms of lost films, the big one is definitely London After Midnight, the Lon Chaney movie from 1927 that, unfortunately, like a lot of silent films from that time, was lost in a fire sometime in the 50s, I believe. And one that I actually just discovered at the time of recording this is a Filipino movie called Batman Fights Dracula. Yes, that apparently existed at one point. From what I read, it was like a Filipino cash-in or parody of the Batman TV series in the 60s with Adam West, but I guess it was never released because, well, they didn't get permission from DC Comics to make it. But that's one that, if it ever is discovered, I would definitely want to give it a watch. Would you rather watch Cuties or the Emoji movie? No contest, the Emoji movie. Like, both of them are bad, but the Emoji movie was just a case of a studio seeing what was popular in pop culture and wanting to cash in on it. Like, it just comes across to me as one of those bad movies that you watch, you hate it, but then you quickly forget about it and move on. Cuties, no. I feel like if I watched that, I would be supporting pedophilia, and I am not about pedophilia, so there you go. Emoji movie, probably a much easier sit than Cuties. Do you wish to work as a film critic or somewhere in the filming industry? I mean, I kind of already am a critic, aren't I? No, but I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't mind doing this sort of thing professionally if I could. I just don't know how I would go about doing that. In terms of working in the filming industry, yeah, I would absolutely love to do it. I mean, of course, you got to start small, so, production assistant, but my ultimate dream has always been to direct my own film. So, yeah, that would definitely be a yes for me. Most underrated / overrated film. Underrated, I would go with Drive Angry. Drive Angry was a 2011 film starring Nicolas Cage, Amber Heard, and William Fichtner that didn't get a whole lot of attention when it came out. It actually bombed pretty badly, and I can kind of see why, because, back then Nick Cage was sort of seen as a joke, but I think it's an amazing film. It's not perfect, of course, but it's also just a ton of fun. Kind of goes back to that sort of grindhouse style of the 60s and the 70s. It's a terrific film. Overrated, I kind of have to go with Bohemian Rhapsody. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a good movie, and I think there's good qualities about it. I just don't think it's as good as a lot of people say it is. Like, in terms of biopics about musicians, I think Rocket Man was a stronger film. But, of course, it's just my opinion. Do you have a movie that's a guilty pleasure? Yes, I'm gonna have to say Battlefield Earth. Yes, I know it's terrible. Believe me, I know it's terrible. It's like one of the absolute worst movies I've ever seen, but I kind of love it because of how bad it is. Like, just the overacting from John Travolta alone makes that movie worth watching. Like, it's just such an unmitigated disaster that it's like a train wreck. Like, you want to look away from it because of how awful it is, but your eyes are just glued to it because it's like, wow, like, I can't believe this actually became a thing. What film still makes you cry to this day? Honestly, I can't really answer this one because, as far as I can remember, I've never cried in a movie. Yes, I apparently am an emotional brick. Like, I just don't feel anything. So, sorry, can't really answer that one. What's the closest to a perfect movie? I gotta go with the original Robocop. Like, it is just one of those movies that no matter how many times I see it, it's still just as good as the very first time I saw it. Like, everything about it to me works. The acting is great, the effects are amazing, the action is intense, the story is really good, it moves at a great pace. I'd say the only problem with it is some of the effects are kind of dated, particularly towards the end of the film. But other than that, it's just an amazing movie, and that is probably the closest I've ever seen to a perfect film. What's a movie that has the most interesting backstory but is mediocre at best? I gotta go with the 1996 Island of Dr Moreau. Like, that is a film that, on its own is not that special, but when you read about the behind the scenes of that film, it's like, it's on a whole other level. Like, just reading about some of the craziness that went on with the film, like the fact that the film's original director, Richard Stanley, was fired after 2 days, the fact that Marlon Brando just went insane with that film. Like, at one point, he even had an ice bucket on his head, which wasn't in the script. The fact that when the original director was fired, Fairuza Balk actually tried to escape the film, literally, and even threatened to kill herself because, she couldn't work without the original director. I mean, hell, the film star David Thewlis has even said in interviews that if you watch the film, you're not seeing him acting, you're seeing him reacting to all the craziness going on around him. Like, that is a movie that's worth watching just for how bizarre it is, but I would also recommend watching the documentary Lost Soul, The Doomed Journey of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr Moreau. It's a fascinating watch. Favorite martial arts movie? To be honest, I haven't really seen that many martial arts movies. I mean, there's stuff like The Raid, Redemption, Big Trouble in Little China, Kill Bill. Those are just a few off the top of my head. But yeah, I need to see more martial arts movies. Actually, an update. I just remembered that I have seen some Bruce Lee movies, but it's been years since I've seen them. Like, I remember seeing Way of the Dragon, I believe, with him and Chuck Norris, and of course I've seen Enter the Dragon, and oh my god, I just remembered, I forgot one. The Last Dragon with Taimak as Bruce Leroy. Like, that one's probably my favorite martial arts movie because it's just such a crazy and fun little movie. Parody movies, yay or nay? It depends. Like, if we're talking old school parody movies, like the films of Mel Brooks or the Zucker brothers, like Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles, Airplane, etc., then it's a definite yay. But if we're talking newer parody films, like the Freeburg Seltzer movies, like Date Movie, Epic Movie, Disaster Movie, Meet the Spartans, then it's definite nay. Favorite animated movie? Well, the first one that comes to mind is Toy Story. That's a movie that I grew up on as a kid. It was actually the first movie that I ever saw in the theater. Like, obviously, the animation's pretty dated by today's standards, but it's a classic. There's also Aladdin is another one of my favorites. In terms of non-Disney animated movies, I'm probably going to have to go with, like, the films of Laika, especially Paranorman. Like, Paranorman, in my opinion, is probably the best of the films that Laika has done. Okay, this next one is pretty loaded, so you're going to have to bear with me on this. Consider you can meet 3 people, one being your favorite director, one being your favorite actor, and one being your favorite screenwriter. Who are they, and what do you ask them, living or dead? Favorite director, probably Stanley Kubrick. Favorite actor, probably Nicolas Cage. In terms of favorite screenwriter, I'd probably go with Shane Black. And as far as like what I would ask them about, For Stanley Kubrick, I'd probably ask him in general what sort of compromises he had to make with the studio system for his movies. For Cage, I'd probably ask him because obviously the reason why he's done a lot of not so great movies is because he owes a lot of money to the IRS, I believe. I'd like to know what of those movies that he did does he regret making? And for Shane Black, I'd like to ask him what it was like to transition from being a screenwriter to a filmmaker. Actors that I admire. Well, of course, there's Nicolas Cage, as I've alluded to before, but some other ones I admire, just going off the top of my head, Mark Hamill, Bruce Campbell, Jeffrey Combs, Barbara Crampton, Malcolm McDowell, Sigourney Weaver, Peter Weller, and Robert De Niro. Obviously, there's like plenty of other actors out there that I love and adore besides those, but those are the ones that at the time of recording this come to my immediate mind. Who's your role model when it comes to movie reviews? I mean, of course, there's the late, great Roger Ebert, who, even if I did disagree with a lot of his reviews, like, the guy was a good writer. Like, he knew how to put a spin on the way he felt about movies, and even if he didn't like a film that you enjoyed, he still found a way to make it funny. I actually take a lot of influence from a lot of other YouTubers who review movies, like Cecil Trachtenberg from Good Bad Flicks. Brandon Tenold is another influence of mine. A lesser-known person named Peter Godgic, aka the Cinemasochist, is a big influence for me in terms of movie reviews. Those are just a few off the top of my head, but those are like the biggest role models for me when it comes to movie reviews. And thus ends my 3-year anniversary Q&A video. I want to take this time to thank everybody in the Discord who submitted a question. I hope you like the answers that I gave. If I didn't answer your question, I apologize. I had to narrow it down to just a few questions, otherwise I'd be here all night. But again, thank you so much, not just for the people who submitted questions, but just in general, everybody who supported me over the years, whether it's through Patreon donations, or just checking out my reviews, or watching my YouTube videos whenever they go up, which is very rarely. Whether or not you've been with me from the very beginning, or you just discovered me out of the blue and started reading my reviews, thank you so much for the support you've given me over the years. It's greatly appreciated. More reviews will be coming out very soon. So yeah, thank you all so much, and look forward to more reviews coming very soon. Have a good one. Take care.